Welcome to Sis Flicks, the podcast where we won't judge you for talking through the movie. Sis Flicks are the movies you laugh at, yearn for, and overanalyze with your girls, significant others, and now us.
We are your hosts,
Paola
and Nadhya, two sisters and designers who discuss chick flicks we hate to love,
tropes we love to hate,
and all of the aesthetic choices in between. Join us as we break down our favorite movies together.
Hey, sister.
Hey, sister. What the fuck, man? Fucking read it.
I haven't talked to you in so long.
Dude, that's the biggest joke of any time we record. Where it's like, I haven't talked to you in ages, and it's like we've been on the phone for 6 consecutive hours.
Oh my god.
All right, guys. So yeah, we hope you're all having like a really beautiful December. If you are a holiday celebrator, we hope you're having an incredible holiday season. It is passing by at the speed of fucking light, and I don't mean Christmas lights. The speed of light. What are we going to do now? We're going to fucking talk about Heartstopper. We've kept it light. Now we're going to go low.
Yeah, this one's a toughie. Let's get into it. We're at episode 3. Last time we left our beautiful gang, Nick was still on holiday and Charlie was having a real tough time at home. So episode 3 actually opens up with Nick in his room. So now we know he's back. Finally, after his 3-week trip, his morning alarm goes off. It is 6:45 in the morning. When he grabs his phone, the book that rests on his nightstand stays in the center of the shot for a full 2 seconds. This book is Queer City by Peter Ackroyd, which is a book that details queer life and history in London dating back to the 14th century. So
that's dope as fuck. That's dope as fuck.
That just sounds dope as fuck. That might have to go into my personal TBR, honestly. Nick looks at his phone and immediately sees a text from his baby boo, Charlie. He cannot wait to see him. 3 weeks has felt like a year, he says. Wild, first of all, that they're seeing each other for the first time at school. Like, I'm watching this and I'm like, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Are they really going to see each other for the first time at school after he's been gone for 3 weeks? Unless Nick literally got back the night before, that doesn't make sense to me. They literally live just a couple blocks from each other. Because the way they would have found a way to like walk to.
It would be too emotional for them to just see each other at school again.
That's what I mean. So this only makes sense to me if Nick literally got back the night before. So we get this scene where he's getting ready, he's getting dressed, like kind of giddy and excited, looking at his phone, really paralleling how we've seen Charlie get dressed as he's texting his boo before school in the past 2 previous seasons. And it is now September. And Nick has, from the last time he left school before prom to now September, he has completely outgrown his uniform. If last season we thought like, his uniform looks a little tight, well, multiply that by 2 now. And this is not just because Kit Connor has been practicing for the pull-ups in Romeo and Juliet for 8 performances a week.
Good God.
This is intentional. I mean, even his tie is too short because he's supposed to look so much bigger than even his rugby lads, so much bigger than Charlie. They've consistently, since the beginning, have been dressing him in clothes that seem just like one size too small for him for that effect, to always make him look just like a bigger guy. They don't need to do that anymore. They can put him in bigger clothes because he is a bigger guy now.
It's wild. Dude, and apparently I read like a very brief blurb where he was talking about how he got like a lot of shit from fans between seasons 1 and 2 because they had envisioned Nick as being like a much beefier type of guy. Yeah.
And then he put it on himself to make himself
beefy
bigger because of that commentary he was getting. And that's just so fucked up.
Deeply weird.
Some fandoms can get so toxic. And I think I would have to say that there's a corner of the Heartstopper fandom that got very toxic energy. And
every fandom.
I guess so, yeah. Like, honestly, abused Kit Connor. Because of a lot of the shit he was getting online, he came out before he was ready on a very public platform. Then they made him feel so insecure about himself that he literally took himself to the gym to get bigger to be able to like meet these expectations. And that's fucked up. This is a young kid. I mean, he's 20 going on 21 when this series first came out a couple of years ago, even younger, still a teenager.
Yeah, he was like 17.
It's fucked up. So
yeah.
Yes, the fandom definitely was not kind to Kid Connor at the beginning. Feel for him. He didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
But look at him now, baby. Out here doing pull-ups 8 times a week.
You're fucking ridiculous. So many pull-ups.
Mad pull-ups. We see him. So we see him arrive in school and greet his rugby friends who now they're back on good terms officially. And, and they're going to be more present this season. So I wanted to officially give them their names, right? We've been calling them the rugby lads, since we started covering Heartstopper. So we have Otis, he's the short one with the dreads. We have Christian. He's the tall kind of redhead, more like auburn hair. And we have Sai, who's the one that wears the glasses. Okay. So that's like his friend group outside of Charlie. But we do see them more this season, and good for him that he did have them kind of to lean on this season too.
Yeah.
So we briefly touch base with the rest of the gang on the first day of school. Tara is the first one we see after Nick, and she is anxious and apprehensive as she is officially starting sixth form. And she's entering into like the sixth form common room. It's almost like a threshold that she's passing through. Her old teacher congratulates her on her amazing GCSEs and advises her to apply to be a prefect, which apparently for us normal Americans is kind of like the RA equivalent of like high school. So like a student leader, they manage student affairs. So this, right, should probably a proud thing to be advised to apply for that. Tara immediately seems overwhelmed at just the thought of it.
Yeah.
But at the moment, she just agrees and moves on to greet her girlfriend. When she greets Darcy, she points out that Darcy's wearing pants. Not very typical for their dress code. And Darcy goes, well, if the sixth form boys can wear pants, why can't I wear pants? For sure. I feel like Tara looks at her with this proud face and she's like, it looks so you. And I think we start seeing Tara kind of look at Darcy taking so much more confidence in herself and really like owning her space and figuring herself out, and she feels so proud of her. I feel like they kind of switch a bit this season where Darcy was really that support for Tara when she was first coming out and being out at school. And so now we kind of see Tara be that support system for Darcy after she's left her mom's house and feels more comfortable really exploring like who she really is. And we're starting to see that take place. So she tells her, you look so you. They hug and they sit with Sahar and Imogen. Then we see Tao arriving to Truum and texting. Who would he be texting, I wonder? A friend? No, he's texting Elle, of course.
Aww.
He's wishing her good luck on her first day at Lambert's. And then we see Elle opening up the text and replying with 3 heart emojis. And we see her as she's walking into Lambert and runs into Naomi and Felix, who all look amazing, by the way. This season, everybody just looks fucking stunning.
Yeah, they all look like really good.
And Felix has on these like white and black swirly pants that I'm obsessed with, that I'm like low-key about to Google. I can't. They're so funky. I love them. And you see the 3 of them walking hand in hand into their first day of school. I truly love this for Elle. Back at Truum, we see a car pulling up into a parking spot. Who is it, baby? Mr. Ajay and Mr. Farouk arriving together. Mr. Farouk suggests that they get out of the car separately since they're supposed to be trying to keep this shit a secret, right?
Okay, girl.
And they're not doing a really good job. Because just as Mr. Ajay is stepping out of the car, Mrs. Singh catches both of them right after they kiss. And she goes, you don't have to be sneakier than that or the kids will be saying you're engaged by lunchtime. Hell yeah.
Not wrong.
Not wrong. And then we finally get to see our favorite lovebirds see each other for the first time since Nick left for Menorca. Nick and Charlie share the longest, tightest hug we've seen them have. Like, again, they portray these characters so well. Very simply, you can just feel through the screen how much they missed each other.
Mm-hmm.
They share their iconic hi and they hug some more. They only break their hug when people around them start poking fun at them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you think they're dating? Ha 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 ha. So Nick grabs Charlie by the hand and pulls him into a storage room to properly make out. And we get our title card, Talk, in a blue-lined talking bubble.
Mm-hmm.
So Nick and Charlie seem to have the same form group again this year. But this year it's led by Mr. Farouk, which I thought was cute, which I thought was fun. As they're at their desk in their usual spot,
Mm-hmm.
they're holding hands. Charlie brings up Nick's birthday, which happens to be that upcoming weekend. And Nick is like, I don't really celebrate my birthday. Which seems to be a very Libra thing to minimize your birthday.
Relax.
Huh, right?
Relax.
Nadhya, do you know anything about that?
Being the center of attention in that way makes me want to dive into the ocean. Like, makes me just want to swim away like a fish. Like, I can't.
You know what? And it seems like some Libras have that in common. Charlie tells him he wants to organize something fun for him. And after Nick tries to protest, Charlie insists that it'll help be a distraction from his own thoughts and feelings. So Nick, worried, decides to no longer protest. And as form comes to an end, Nick brings up where they might meet for lunch. And by the way Charlie's body just stiffens up, he can tell he's triggered him. And at this moment, Nick flashes back to the conversation that he had with his Aunt Diane at the beach that night, where she provided something of a roadmap in a way in how to talk to Charlie in a way that'll support him.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that she mentioned to Nick was, first find the place where they both feel safe. Mention the things that have concerned you. Let them know that you care about them. And try to keep the issue, in this case food, from being the center of the conversation or the focus of what they're talking about. And this is so important to see laid out so clearly. Like, even as I was writing these notes earlier today, I was in tears thinking about this, because I feel like when we came up, right, us as teenagers, this was such a taboo topic. People didn't talk about this. You never saw this so clearly laid out for an audience of young people. Nick as a character, this teenager, this 16-year-old, he's watching a loved one struggle. And when you're watching a loved one struggle at a young age like that, you don't know what to say. If you don't grow up in an environment that talks about mental health, you have no idea what to do and what to say. Without knowing, you kind of just default to, oh, hey, don't feel so sad. Hey, let's try to cheer up. Things like that you think you're saying something positive, but what you're doing is triggering the person that's going through a hard time. This type of modeling is so important in this show. I loved so much how clearly it was laid out for Nick by an elder and by a professional, giving the audience a resource. This show, in a very clear way, provided very simple stepping stones to help any viewer navigate a similar situation. And she concludes by reassuring Nick that Charlie is so fortunate to have somebody like him in his life. And because of that, everything's going to be okay. So Nick, with his aunt's advice in mind, is looking at Charlie, who has been triggered by Nick bringing up lunch, and says, hey, what if we meet in the art room? A safe space, right? And this fortunately helps Charlie kind of relax. But as he walks away, his face and the screen immediately starts to turn dark as he reaches for his arm and begins to kind of grip or scratch really aggressively through his clothes. Thankfully, after that scene, though, we get a little comic relief as we get this little montage of Tao updating the guys on every single freaking story that Elle posts that day. Like, they don't follow her on IG as well and didn't also see the same story. So, and Charlie and Isaac, they let him pass until Isaac just can't take it anymore And it's like, yo, dude, I fucking love Elle, but I don't need the play-by-play.
Yeah.
Like, I do not need the Sis Flicks recap of Elle's day at school, okay?
So you talk about a movie, you talk about a 90-minute movie for 2 hours?
For
is
2
that,
hours?
Is that what you do? Shouldn't
Yeah,
I just watch the movie? Okay.
It's not the same. Shut the fuck up. Anyway, Isaac continues to say, you can't make your relationship your whole life. And Tao fucking attacks Charlie. Like Charlie does.
That's
like,
not
sir,
nice.
First of all, keep my wife's name out of your damn mouth.
I hate you. I hate your guts.
Sir, Charlie couldn't even talk to Tao about Nick when they first started dating because Tao was so fucking insufferable with the judginess and shit. I'm a fab one. And not even Isaac. I never remembered Isaac being this annoyed at Charlie, if even at all. Also, like, how different would Tao's day be if Elle was still at Higgs? Would it be, would he be seeing her the whole time? No, it'd be the same. So
yeah, for sure.
Anyway, it's lunchtime now. And Charlie goes off to Mr. Jai's classroom for his lunch. And walks in on Mr. Jai and Mr. Farouk looking suspiciously close to each other. And Charlie catches the vibes immediately. It took him 0.5 seconds. And, you know, although I know Charlie's interrupting this moment, I do love how Mr. Ajay immediately just says yes with no hesitation. There was no hesitation for Mr. Ajay. He's like, yes, absolutely, you can have lunch here. Because I think he knows how much that space means to Charlie, to their friend group, but specifically to Charlie. Mm-hmm. And him and Mr. Farouk just quickly separate and pretend like they're all done with their lunch. Mr. Farouk leaves. Mr. Ajay stays behind to ask Charlie about his summer. He's surprised because Charlie didn't prefer to sit with his friends and catch up with them. And Charlie very openly says that he prefers to eat in the art room because it's less stressful, and actually starts to open up a bit about not feeling well mentally. He just says, you know, my brain isn't good at the moment. Mm-hmm. And he starts to kind of open up to Mr. Ajay about like these rules he has around eating. And Mr. Ajay, he's just about to delve a little bit further into what Charlie's saying, and Nick walks in and unintentionally interrupts this interaction. So here we see Charlie feeling safe almost immediately and comfortable to finally like open up about this thing that he's been struggling with to an adult. And it gets interrupted by Nick, who's just there kind of in protection of Charlie as well. And it's so unfortunate that that got interrupted because I think he could have really used that support from an adult at that moment. As Nick joins him, right, and he watches him break down his lunch, he tries to bring up the phone conversation that they shared while Nick was away. And Charlie, who seemed so open to talk to Mr. Ajay about what he's going through, couldn't seem to bring himself around to talking to Nick about it at that time. That broke my heart a little bit. He was kind of inching to talk about it. Now his head is in a different space. Mm-hmm. It takes a different headspace for Charlie to have that conversation with Nick than it did to be able to talk to Mr. Ajay about it.
Well, the stakes are higher.
Maybe the stakes are different. Yeah. So it was interesting to see that shift so quickly. But Charlie at least was able to get through some of his lunch. However, when we see him in the next scene, he's literally falling asleep on Nick and just expresses like how low energy he feels, which one tracks with not eating well, mm-hmm. and two tracks with what seems to be a current state of depression for him. And as he's leaning on Nick with Nick's big rugby arms around him.
You're a ridiculous human being.
He's very comfortable.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Watching this from across the room is James, who out loud comments to Isaac, I wish I had a boyfriend. And Isaac's like, no, please
I need
no.
one friend without a fucking boyfriend.
If I'm made to be the third wheel one more time, I'm going to roll over and die. Like,
respect.
Please. So something interesting about this thing is they're setting up a mental health table. Last season, we saw them setting up a pride table. Mm-hmm. So it's letting you know the themes. So while they're putting up this display together, Isaac expresses that the idea of being with someone sounds nice, but it's not actually what he wants. So he's kind of like opening up to James here. And so James looks at him and he's just like, so are you aromantic? And it was like a switch. He immediately smiles, surprised that James knows what aromantic means. And it turns out James read a book with an aromantic character that introduced him to the term. A book that would probably be banned in a red state thanks to
#book bans.
And so he admits that while reading this book, this character made him think of what happened with them in Paris and helped him kind of understand how Isaac might have felt. And in turn, this helped Isaac feel better or understood. Like, you can just see the shift in his face. It's like the first time you see him smile throughout this episode. Then we're finally at Nick's birthday. He knows Charlie planned something. And now, thanks to Tao, he knows everybody's going to be there. But Charlie is determined to keep everything else a secret, right? Where they're going, what they're doing. So Nick goes to the house to get Charlie. And while Charlie goes to get his jacket, Tori comes down. And even though he's facing the stairs, he still manages to jump at realizing that Tori has come down the stairs. Like, what? Does she move like a ghost? Like, I don't understand. But she comes down the stairs. She looks visibly upset and very worried. He thanks her for sending him the message about Charlie and lets her know he's trying to help and hopefully will get him to talk to their parents at some point. So this kind of like reassures Tori, and she's putting a lot of trust in Nick here. Charlie grabs Nick, they rush out of the house, and then we see them walking with Charlie fully covering his eyes as they arrive to a zoo along with all of their mutual friends. It's very cute, but just within a few seconds, we see everyone pair up, leaving Isaac behind. So he's about to be done. You can see he's like a ticking time bomb at this point. Even Imogen and Sahar, who aren't a romantic couple, quote unquote, pair up and leave him behind as well. You know, and like
That's
nobody's really, we've seen this. And like somebody always remembers to include Isaac. And we're kind of at a point where everybody's kind of so consumed with what they got going on with their significant other, with the stuff going on around them. And Isaac is not feeling included. We get a cute little montage. Everybody's hanging out at the zoo, feeding animals, taking pictures. I don't personally enjoy the zoo. The zoo makes me sad. It's very cute. I appreciate why zoos exist. It's very educational. It's community building, obviously rescuing animals who are not able to be released back into the wild. They still make me very sad.
Yeah.
But they're making it look like a great fucking time. They're having a blast.
They're having a bunch of fun.
Nick compares Charlie to a lemur with his dark hair and big old eyes.
Paola's husband famously compares
My
her to a koala.
husband compares me to a koala. That has been a running joke ever since we started dating in high school. It's only been like 20 years. And anytime there's a koala anything, that's me. I'm happy to see I'm not the only one. Charlie's being compared to a lemur. Tara and Darcy pick up on some vibes from Sahar and Imogen. Darcy's looking over at Sahar and Imogen. I think it was like feeding goats or something. And just says, looks a bit gay to me. Sad. Girl, and Darcy's gaydar has not missed not one time in the past 3 seasons. So you already know.
Yeah.
We see Charlie's energy start to wane to the point where he's even refusing to take pictures. And Tao kind of picks up on this, but he leaves it alone. As the girls are walking, Darcy gets annoyed at being called a lady. So we see her continuing to push back on these gender norms. And Tara, who's been clocking this recently, right, asks her, do you really hate that? Do you really hate that they called you a lady? And Darcy replies, like, yes, I'm not a lady. It's weird. And Tara, like the viewer at this moment, kind of takes that like, okay. And you're left to kind of contemplate that a bit while we turn to Isaac and Tao. Isaac, who has pretty much had it with everyone, leaving him out, finally has this interaction with Tao, a bit of a tiff, and confronts him at this moment about being a bad friend, only caring about his relationship with his girlfriend. And Tao proceeds to further prove his point by immediately lashing out on Isaac for being single. That was quite literally Isaac's reaction. He literally sighed and walked away. My favorite part of that interaction was the fucking side eye that Elle gives Tao when he fucking realizes what an asshole he just was. She pulls him aside and lets him know how out of line he was. I'm tired for Elle having to be the emotional,
she must be exhausted,
intelligent one every single time. She helps him realize that they have been neglecting their friends. She's taking responsibility as well and reminds him how bitter he was with Charlie when he first started dating Nick. And then she quotes him back to himself. Friends are important, Tao. You know this. And so Tao looks for Isaac after this conversation with Elle because she's the only one that can bring him to his senses. And Isaac happens to be standing by the jellyfish. He walks up to him and immediately apologizes and takes accountability for how he's put them on the back burner since he officially started dating Elle. I mean, this is something we don't see Tao do very easily, is take accountability right away. I mean, but when he does do it well. And Isaac also takes a bit of responsibility for feeling bitter because he admits that he has felt bitter about all of them essentially prioritizing their romantic relationships over their friendships and making it seem like a romantic relationship is the most important thing. It's the best thing any of them can ever hope for, leaving him feeling really left out, especially when he knows that for himself, it's not what he aspires to. And so he takes this moment to let Tao know that it's not even what he wants. Realizing that is something that he's still coming to terms with. As he's been talking to Tao, the gang has kind of been approaching and also stopped to admire the jellyfish that are right by them. And Darcy kind of contemplates out loud if jellyfish are gay. So funny thing about that is that jellyfish are actually asexual. They reproduce both sexually and asexually. They have a stage in the reproduction system where they quite literally clone themselves.
Ooh, well.
It's complicated and weird, but yes, jellyfish reproduce both sexually and asexually, with some species having both male and female reproductive organs. So the aquarium portion of the zoo holds the perfect symbolism to have this conversation in. Marine life is incredibly fluid. Sexuality in nature in general is incredibly fluid. The human species seems to be the only ones complicating shit and having a problem with it.
On brand.
And that's only been in recent human history.
Yeah, that's all we do.
So Isaac takes this opportunity to come out to the gang as asexual and aromantic, kind of using these jellyfish as a metaphor. And as he's explaining this, a neon blue jellyfish swims across the screen, representing Isaac. He gets his own animation again, and he explains that he's still learning how to accept it and feel okay with his sexuality because, in truth, it changed everything he thought he knew about himself, his life, and his future. And Nick from the background adds that it's normal to be upset. It's normal for it to take some time to settle in because he tells the story of the time he cried on his own at an Am I Gay quiz. And we saw that happening and we all cried with him a little bit. Everyone, of course, is super supportive, incredibly supportive. I do love the inclusion of this scene. However, it did feel a bit too Disney special for me.
Yeah, it felt overwrought, this scene.
It felt a bit overwritten, right?
Yeah.
Like it didn't feel
as organic as some
natural.
of the other moments that we've seen.
Exactly.
Where we get some of these like really awesome explainers, but this one felt very much.
And not that it wasn't a great scene. It was a great scene. It almost felt too on the nose.
Yeah.
It didn't feel organic, as you said. And Toby Donovan's performance was really good. You can sense the apprehension in his voice as he's saying all of this out loud to everyone. Throughout the beginning of this season, when you see him kind of coming out to a friend, he came out to Charlie, he came out to James. He's kind of very nonchalant and chill about it and like very accepting, like, oh yeah, this is what I am. And you can see now that it's not that simple, it's not that chill, and it's not that easy. So I think he did a great job kind of portraying that, hey, this is something I am still coming to terms with. And I had a lot of different ideas of of what I wanted. And this is kind of changing everything for me. So he gave a lot of weight to that, whereas it felt very light before, like very chill and nonchalant. So I really appreciated Toby Donovan's performance in delivering that. So as the gang continues to move through the aquarium, Charlie has to take a minute to sit down because he's running really low at this point. Nick sits with him. Tao seems to notice for the second time this day that something's off with Charlie. But he's with Nick, so he kind of keeps it moving. But then he catches Nick by himself at the gift shop and starts to question him immediately. What's going on with Charlie? What's wrong with Charlie? And let me just say, like, I don't know if this was maybe forethought from Tao or it's just the way that it worked out because Nick is the one he bumped into at the gift shop first. But I'm so glad that he walked up to Nick and asked him like this instead of running up on Charlie with that energy. Because if he walked up on Charlie with that energy, it was going to be an immediate trigger.
Yeah.
He approaches Nick and Nick is able to kind of to like temper Tao's concern for a second. He doesn't say exactly what's going on because he feels like it's not his place to, which respects to Nick. He's respecting Charlie's privacy, but also he doesn't want Tao to confront Charlie in any way. So if he can't comfort Tao's worry, he knows that Tao's next step is to go up to Charlie. Thankfully, however, Tao seems to kind of accept what Nick is giving him for now. And I think this shows so much the trust that Tao now has in Nick, where he knows something's wrong with Charlie, but he can see that Nick is doing what he can to show up for him and just has to trust that for now. Season 1, even season 2, Tao
Never ever.
could have never. I actually really respected that from Tao, and I loved seeing that growth in the trust between both of them. So they're leaving the gift shop. Nick gives Charlie a stuffed lemur. It's so fucking cute as a thank you for the best birthday ever. They're so fucking adorable. And Nick just wants to call it a day. Charlie's shutting down and he's like, hey guys, what if we call it a night? Everybody's like cool with it. And Charlie goes back to Nick's house and finally gives him his birthday present that he wrapped 500 times in front of Tori. And what's the first thing that Nick opens? A bag of hoodies that Charlie has kept of his.
That's a very funny gift.
That was hilarious because honestly, this is me every time Nadhya comes over. Like, this is yours and this is yours and this is yours and this is yours.
And guys, the only reason it doesn't happen for me is because Paola does not really come to my apartment. So otherwise she would find a bunch of her shit here.
And whenever I do, I'm like, yo, what are you not wearing? What do you got in here? What's this? This is new.
I like this.
I like this. What are you doing with this? You're not wearing this.
As soon as I hear I like this, I
you.
mentally grieve. I prepare for that item to leave me.
At the bottom of the bag of Nick's hoodies, there is a wrapped up blank scrapbook that's titled Memories with a picture of Nick and Charlie at the beach that we didn't see anybody take. We did not see anybody take that picture, but we're going to suspend our disbelief and pretend somebody was up that close to them and took a picture without anyone noticing.
Right.
Or them even. Okay. With a message that reads, you gave me a photo of us in the snow, so here's one of us in the sun. Love, Charlie. How freaking cute. And so they appropriately make out after that adorable fucking exchange. And in the next scene, we see Charlie asleep on Nick again. As Nick is scrolling through IG, he scrolls past a post of Imogen, a post of Jonathan Bailey as Jack Maddox. Scrolls past a picture of Darcy and Tara, and then sees a post that Charlie posted of them two that day that reads, perfect day, where Charlie's not even looking at the camera. He looks down at Charlie and he starts to contemplate on trying to have that conversation with him and wakes him up with a kiss. And he immediately brings up how he's noticed that Charlie's been tired all day. Before Charlie turns to go home, he puts his hand on him. And he tells him he loves him. And letting his hand rest on Charlie, he brings up the conversation about how Charlie has been feeling mentally. He tells him how he's been worried, not just about his eating, but also about his emotional state and his physical state. He says that he really wants him to talk to someone, his parents, a doctor, anybody like that. And Charlie, this whole time that Nick's been speaking, is looking away, can't look at him. And he finally turns his face to look at Nick, who's now crying. And Charlie immediately breaks down into Nick's arms and cries, saying that he doesn't think he can ever get any better. Nick reassures him that he can. You can get better if you get help. So when Charlie shares his anxiety about opening up to his parents, because he doesn't think his parents will believe him, he doesn't think they'll take him seriously, which is honestly heartbreaking. Nick offers to accompany him as a buffer and suggests that he can write down whatever he wants to say so that it's easier to say it. Great fucking advice, Nick. The song Complex by Katie Gregson McLeod starts to play and says, I'm 21. The edge is razor thin between being numb and feeling everything. And I'm literally watching this bawling. In the next scene, they're walking up to Charlie's house, hand in hand, centered on the screen. And they continue on into the house, walking together. Charlie's mom immediately questions Nick being there. Sorry. Girl. Yes. And immediately pisses me off. And if Nick hadn't been there, that reaction alone to anything, like Charlie walking in late, like I could have already seen her, Charlie, why is it so late? Or I thought we talked about this. I could have seen her, any type of that response, Charlie would have called it off right there.
Yeah.
But he keeps on. And Nick and Charlie go and sit down hand in hand. Charlie has not let go of Nick's hand the whole time. He opens up his paper and looks at Nick, and Nick continues to encourage him to keep going. And he reads, my mental health has been really bad lately. I've been finding eating very difficult. I feel like there's a voice in my head that's not me telling me bad things will happen if I eat or do things the wrong way. And that voice is getting louder and louder. And the camera starts to pan across the room. We see his parents become emotional. And then the camera rests on Tori, his older sister, who is now listening from the stairs. And we get back to Charlie, center screen, as he cries and says, I want to get better. And I'm watching this like an entire mess. when we were watching this, I was an entire mess. And then it cuts to black as Complex continues to play. Holy shit, what a fucking episode.
What do you think it was about this episode that affected you so much?
Just how much pain Charlie's feeling. How much pain, how much uncertainty, how much guilt. He's in so much pain. He doesn't know what to do or say about it. And so he in turn like hurts himself because he's in so much pain and doesn't know where to place it. You know, and then seeing kind of Nick trying to be there for him and help him along and not knowing what to do either, you know, and it was, again, I'm so grateful for that scene with his aunt, because if he didn't have that to hold on to like, okay, do this and then do this, like, you know, a step by step, like they wouldn't have gotten to where they gotten to. It would have just been Nick and Charlie kind of just
alone,
just trying to fight this alone somehow, some way, not really knowing what to do, what to say. But who knows how that would have gone. I can tell you how it would have gone. There's codependency, toxicity, nothing gets fixed. It continues to build, and then now you're fighting against each other because you're not making each other feel better in that state. So, yeah. You know, and I think that also watching it and realizing now, like, I feel like there were so many of those instances throughout my life or even our lives where it was so hard to name the thing. It's so hard to name the thing and know what to do about the thing. And you're kind of just like, oh, I feel like this, but I don't know why I feel like this. Or like not knowing what to say or not knowing how to comfort somebody who's struggling. And just seeing that play out and kind of being able to identify with it in a way, either as Charlie or as Nick, it felt very close. It felt very close to home. And I think could relate to so many different things that I think we've seen as teenagers, as young adults. So, whole fucking shit just makes me emotional. God damn it.
And back to your regularly scheduled programming of us being deeply fucking unserious.
I'm sorry that you had to be the first one to go to therapy and educate the rest of us.
Dude, it didn't fucking work. I mean, I think about it now, and mostly I'm just glad that I made it to therapy. You know what I mean?
100%, yeah.
I wrote some stuff about this in the notes for episode 4, but
oh great, we're gonna talk about this again.
Ooh, fun, we're killing it. Watching this for the first time, I think, and obviously like I had like my laptop open, like I was trying to distract myself a little bit. I don't think it made me as emotional as it made you, because I didn't deal with anything like that, as in I didn't deal with dealing with it, right? Because it was like I felt depressed or I felt very anxious or whatever, but I didn't do anything meaningful about it until I was an adult. And similar to Charlie, but not very similar in the end, I just never got out of the space of like not trusting my parents. Watching that was kind of like, it felt too fictional to me, because I literally could not imagine a world where I felt the same as Charlie, which I absolutely have many times throughout my life, and sat in front of my parents to have an earnest conversation with them about it and then have them treat me with respect.
Oh, and follow through.
Yeah. No, I'm not, I'm not trying to like villainize my parents. I don't think that's their fault, but I can't imagine myself having that conversation with my mother today and having it be received in like a, I don't want to say sensitive because that makes it sound like you need somebody to like coddle you, but have it be received in like a considerate way. A way that is constructive rather than destructive. I don't think they had the capability of doing that ever. And I think at 15, I knew that. And I was like, I need to get out of here. All right, guys. After that therapy session, we're... that will no doubt be heavily edited for anonymity. Oh,
man.
We're going to move in to episode 4, which is titled Journey. So episode 3 was pretty fucking heavy. And don't worry, episode 4 is going to pack a punch. This episode of Heartstopper begins from Nick's point of view, which is a little less common for us, right? Like Charlie really is our protagonist. He's really the kid that we're going to follow, but we're really staying with Nick for at least the first half of this episode. We open the episode with Nick walking Nellie as we see Christmas lights and holiday decorations in the background for context and for timeline. Nick's birthday is sometime in September. Obviously, the holidays are around December. And if they're going back to school after the holiday break, that's going to be January. So we see Nick, after he enters his home, he's done walking Nellie, on the phone with Tara in a split screen. It's very cute, very high school coming of age, who advises him to start journaling to quote unquote process his emotions, even as Nick contends that he's not the journaling type. Girl, I'm going to second that. I, too, am not the journaling type. I journal for a singular week, and then I forget that I have a notebook.
I try.
Yeah.
Yes, I can't be consistent. But I've gotten better at when I'm feeling a strong thing. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I need to write it down. Writing down does help, right? It does help kind of like, okay, let me rationalize these emotions. I'm putting that down on paper so I can, read it to myself. I've seen that help. So I'm like, if I'm feeling something super deep, mm-hmm. and I don't know where to put it, and Nadhya's working, I take out my notes app. If anybody ever fucking finds my notes app,
no, nope,
I'm
getting institutionalized if someone finds my notes app.
If anybody finds my notes app, they're going to put me in a straitjacket.
Yeah, like I'm going away for years.
No. Protect the notes app. I need to have a password.
I love the memes that are like a girl's notes app, and it's like, I can't fucking do this shit anymore. I think it's time to end things. And then the next note is like, bye broccoli. And then the next note is like 9:30 a.m. Pilates class. Like
lyrics to a song.
Oh yeah, the note after that is like, work computer password. Literally.
Very relatable.
Yeah.
Once Nick started to narrate from his journal, it took me back a bit. It felt weird. It felt off. Mm-hmm. Flashbacks are always weird, and especially one that's narrated.
Yeah. Especially because this show doesn't really operate in flashback.
It's never really done that.
It's done flashback like a handful of times.
And when it does flashbacks, it's a quick thing.
Yeah, very brief.
It's a quick thing, and and it's triggered by a memory or something. But like, when you're doing like a full flashback, starting back on this day, and then like you're moving forward from that day, mm-hmm. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this.
Yeah.
But I ended up being okay with it. Like, I think I was okay with how they did it.
I think I was okay with how they did it. Honestly, I'm a little medium on this episode. It does make me very, very emotional. I just found a little bit of like the direction. I understand how they brought it together at the end.
Right.
I think it did end up working, but I found the direction a little like convoluted. It was like a little tough for me.
The passage of time this whole season felt
Funky.
Yeah. Right?
Because there's a lot of compressed time in this season.
Yes.
More so than before.
Oh my, season 2 was the Paris trip.
Yeah.
Season 2
Literally.
was a couple weeks.
Yeah, season 2 was like a month and a half of Heartstopper time.
This season, just in the first half,
it's like 6 months of Heartstopper time.
Months.
Yeah.
So the time felt funky because it felt like you lingered in a day, and then you would
fast forward
you would
through
rush
weeks.
through. You would exactly.
Yeah.
This caught me off guard, but then once we were in it, I was like, okay, I appreciated not the flashback, because honestly, for me, I would have just preferred the episode to start
with the events,
what's happening
with
the events, and just work on it chronically. What I appreciated from the way they did the flashback is that you get Nick's perspective.
Exactly. I was gonna say the same thing. That's my favorite part,
and that's what got me like, okay, well, I like that I'm getting Nick's perspective. I don't like how they did the flashback necessarily, but I like that we get into Nick's brain and into how he's seeing this play out, because we don't have access to Charlie right now.
Yeah. And also, I really liked the emphasis on, obviously we're going to continue getting into the details, but I really liked the emphasis on how what's happening with Charlie is affecting the people around him rather than just him.
Yes.
Because to be perfectly honest with you, that's a point of view I never really get. I'm usually the one in crisis, and then the people around me just have to, like, I don't know, deal with that. So
I don't know. I feel like I bother you consistently.
No, you never bother me.
I'm letting you know how this is affecting me, Nadhya.
Get better. No.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
You know, which is because I feel like most of the times when you're dealing with something, we know it's going to affect the people around us. That's what makes us not want to share.
Exactly.
We don't want you to worry. We don't want you to, So I think it's important to show, yes, this affects the people around you. It's not changing their life.
Yeah.
They're living life. They're still thinking about you. They're still living their life with you in mind. They miss you. They want to talk to you. They're still able to continue. And I think it's important to see that as somebody who's maybe struggling. You're like, well, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. Take care of you, because they're going to be okay. We'll touch base when we can.
But even that is like a double-edged sword, right? Because as we see in this episode, like, yeah, Nick is living and just doing his own thing, still hanging out with his friends, still learning to drive. He's not
exactly fine. Exactly.
But then there are moments where you really see him struggling. And then it's like that whole idea. I've totally been there where I'm like, everybody will be fine. If I disappear for a while, right? Not permanently.
I mean, fine. We're saying fine subjectively to each person. When I say fine, I mean like their life isn't going to stop.
Right. Nobody's life will.
They're going to continue to move on. Emotionally, they will miss you. They will want to talk to you. That's still something you're going to contend with, but you can do that when you are ready and when you can. You know what I'm saying? Don't stop your own healing because you're worried that other people are going to be affected.
Mm-hmm. In this episode, we definitely see both sides of that. And after Nick is on the phone with Tara, he kind of reluctantly agrees. He's like, fine, I'll try to start journaling. And we see him open up a journal, start writing out the date, getting into whatever is on his mind. It becomes, as it has so many times before across many movies and shows, it becomes a voiceover over pretty much like a montage mashup of the events that he's describing in his journal. On a page dated December 17th, not 17th December, and they're in England. So I'm like, interesting. We see Nick beginning to journal, and now we're going to hear about what the last 2 months have been like, since you can assume, ostensibly, Charlie has had this difficult conversation with his parents regarding his mental health. As we hear from Nick, things get pretty dark, for Charlie after he confessed to his parents. They were very proactive in getting him, an appointment with a GP, general practitioner, and the GP referred him to an eating disorder service. We're having a lot of discourse in the United States right now about health insurance and how that can affect your life.
Yeah.
But I do know that, you know, in England, for example, your health service is the NHS, right? So it's like a form of like more socialized medicine. Something that tends to happen in systems like that is like, even though there's less of an upfront cost, you tend to have kind of longer waiting periods. Sometimes there can be issues with like staffing and stuff. So he gets a referral to an eating disorder service. The first appointment for that service wasn't available until months later. As they're waiting, right, for this open appointment, Charlie's disorder gets worse. He starts getting angry. He starts lashing out at Nick and their friends. That obviously is incredibly unpleasant for everyone. And then you have these moments where Charlie is feeling super guilty and constantly apologizing. I'm so sorry I was acting like that. Obviously, we're not handling the source of these issues yet. So eventually, Charlie pulled away from Nick, started missing school. And in spite of, you know, Charlie's mental state, Nick tried really hard to help, to be there for him, to listen, not to judge him. Kind of, again, as Paola mentioned with episode 3, following his aunt's advice, right? And this entire kind of like montage-y scene, even with Nick's voiceover, is happening under this like soft, mellow kind of indie pop song with the lyrics, I want to go party, I want to have fun, I want a better body, I want better skin, I want to be perfect like all your other friends. I think it's it's a great song choice, and I think it just addresses like Charlie's feelings of like powerlessness on his emotions and his feelings of inadequacy, right? Like, I want to be this type of person, and right now I can't, and right now I'm not, and I don't know what to do about that.
The scene where he's kind of like sharing with Nick, like, I just feel like shit all the time. Like, I'm lashing out, and like he's recognizing this, and they're in the art room, and they're hunkered down in that corner by that tree painting,
roots of the tree,
and they're the way they shoot it, they're shooting it kind of like on eye level with them, so it looks almost like they're looking up. It's a great shot choice there.
Yeah, I really like that too. These scenes are pretty much taking place between school and home, like whether it's Nick's home, Charlie's home, and Shroom. But it's very quick kind of snippets of scenes, like just a few lines of dialogue or a few looks, or as Nick is narrating this entire thing. And we also see a montage of these kind of larger friend group moments of the gang where Nick is preoccupied by Charlie. Charlie is distracted or not participating, kind of half there. Something that's really nice about hanging with the gang is that they just still accept that. Like, yes. No one's like, you're being fucking weird, what's your problem? Like, I think they just kind of like let him be and exist. And obviously the flip side of that is like, but when does it become kind of complacency, right? Like, when do you not address that there's something clearly wrong with your friend? I don't know, right? That was a threshold.
There's a balance there.
Yeah, totally. And that was a balance I never struck when I was a teenager. So, or a young adult. Maybe I'll strike it. Find me in 10 years. Maybe I'll know. But we get a shot where the boys are playing video games, Charlie and Nick, and they seem to be having a good time. That's a good day. We get another shot where they're outside at a picnic. Elle is cutting Darcy's hair, surrounded by the gang, because Darcy wants to affirm their exploration of their gender identity, right? We're starting to wade into non-binary waters with Darcy.
Yeah.
She hasn't updated any pronoun usage. She's just kind of updating her look, right? Something that is a bit more gender affirming. Or non-gender affirming, however. You know, we see small pages at the top corner of the screen with different months. So now we're in October. Episode started in December. So Charlie continued to struggle. And this episode is kind of like, I feel like narratively, because so much of it is flashback and so much of it is narrated, I'm almost kind of telling it as a story less than how we would usually break down a show. So bear with me.
Because it felt like Nick was telling a story.
Yeah.
He's telling the story of how he got to where he was.
Right.
How the past few months went is him telling a story, and we're just kind of seeing it flow through the screen quickly.
Yes. And, you know, Charlie continued to struggle, continued to confide in Nick, and his parents decided to try, I guess, a private eating disorder clinic, right? Like a place they had to pay for rather than a place that was administered by the health service. Charlie agreed.
And I think that also shows you a bit of growth in even during this turmoil, because Charlie calls Nick. It's like the middle of the night and he's kind of spiraling. And Nick says, do you think you can tell your parents? the last time that Charlie opened up to his parents about that, he needed Nick to be there for him.
Mm-hmm.
This time he's told them over the phone, hey, do you think you could tell your parents that like you're spiraling right now? And he did, and they were able to find this service that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And Charlie agrees to go. He gets checked in. It's a pretty much like an inpatient, like a short-term inpatient facility. So Charlie's pretty much going to be away for a few months. Unfortunately, he can't use his phone while he's there, and Nick could not keep in contact with him, which is obviously really hard. They spend tons of time together. They're texting all the time. And, you know, Nick struggled without Charlie at school, at home. He tried to keep himself busy. He was still very distracted by missing Charlie frequently. As the viewer, we see Nick learning to drive, not being great at it. Big LOLs. I don't know how to drive. That's Nadhya lore. We see their friends trying to be supportive, again, trying to keep him busy and keep him occupied. And this includes Nick's rugby friends that Paola named earlier, whose names I've totally forgotten. One of them is named Otis. I remember that. And
Otis, Sai, and...
that's all.
Great.
And his rugby friends, who were very sweet, very supportive, and very understanding of Nick, even when he doesn't necessarily provide any detail on how Charlie's doing, he just says that he misses Charlie and that Charlie won't be at school for a while. That's something that Nick has always been really good at, I think, like preserving people's privacy, not addressing things that aren't his business, and not giving that information to other people. And his friends are super respectful of that, which is so mature for teenage boys. Cannot imagine it. Maybe they make them different out there. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in the U.S. Like, I don't know about y'all.
I think Nick is
he's a special
specimen.
Yeah, he's a special kind. We get a short scene where the gang are at a picnic where they're collectively writing letters and making crafts for Charlie while he's gone, which is so precious. This makes my heart hurt. And Tara tells Nick that Sahar is having a big Halloween party and that it might be fun to, quote, have a night out, end quote, and try to get his mind off of things. Nick kind of reluctantly agrees because I think in his mind, he's like, if I don't go, my friends are just going to give me shit until I go. I'm going to feel bad anyway, so I may as well feel bad at a party. Like, I kind of see like the gears like turning in his mind, even though he doesn't feel up to it. And also I apologize because I feel like I kind of switched tenses because as I'm telling the story, I'm like, oh, we're the viewer. We're seeing it in present tense. But for the purposes of the story, this is in the past. So like, yeah, I'm going to mix those up. I'm not doing that very well.
That's okay. You're telling it as it's happening because as the viewer, you're seeing it happen.
Right. So we see Nick, even though he's not feeling up to it, he attends the Halloween party, but definitely feels like very out of place without Charlie.
Dressed as who?
He's dressed as Captain America.
Captain
The Marvel
America.
references never fucking end. Like,
also, I think it's so funny that he's, again, right? Because his aunt, Diane, she played
fucking
Captain America's Peggy.
Yes.
And now he's Captain America. They keep bringing these Marvel references full circle.
It's so funny. How many Marvel references can we have?
And Imogen's pissed.
He was supposed to go as Ken, and she went as Barbie.
Oh, Ken and Barbie. And he showed up as Captain America. That's hilarious.
Let's disregard the fact that Imogen could play Margot Robbie's like little sister or cousin. Like all
big
these,
ass blue eyes.
Literally, all of these blonde bitches with angular faces and blue eyes. And she's pissed. She's fully dressed as Barbie. Honestly, Barbie doesn't need Ken to be in the costume, okay? Also, the party looks kick-ass. Not for nothing.
Yo, this party is dope.
If you're not depressed because your boyfriend is struggling with his mental health, this party was a great time. It's like there are crazy lights. There's a ton of music. The decorations. There's so much alcohol. Fucking fuck.
Did you have a favorite costume?
Oh, my favorite costume was Isaac.
Oh my God. Isaac was they don't confirm this. He is 100% Mr. Darcy.
Yeah.
100% Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy, neurodivergent king. Nick isn't really himself at this party. Like, you know, he's pretty bummed out. He has a few drinks. It doesn't really do much, I think. And he sees Imogen and Sahar, like, just in a corner, like, making out.
Wild. And we're all like, okay, so we're watching this and we see out of fucking nowhere Imogen and Sahar making out. We're like, what the?
Dude.
What?
And not for nothing, that makeout looked horrible.
It was a drunk makeout. They did a good job at displaying a drunk makeout.
Yeah, Paola, I'm still a good kisser when I'm drunk. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, And so, like, part of me is like, okay, is this shit official?
I don't know, dog. So we cut from that scene to Nick in the bathroom with Imogen holding her hair back as she drunkenly throws up and defends her right to quote unquote experiment with her sexuality because she's a teenager. Oof. Yeah, dude, but maybe you should be doing that with like consent, active informed consent from the other person.
I mean, so hard looked like she was having a fight.
Informed consent.
Informed, like knowing like this is where this is going.
Yes.
I mean, Sahar's also testing the waters with Imogen.
Yeah, but it's when I mean informed, I mean like for one of us this is gonna mean something probably, and for the other it's gonna mean like a lot less.
Right.
Like we're experimenting.
Yeah. Also, of course it's Nick that's with Imogen pulling her hair back.
Absolutely. A king.
Of course it's Nick.
King.
Nobody else, none of the other girls. Of course it's Nick.
King. And we see in another shot Tao in the kitchen of this party. Tao, who is dressed as the like bunny rabbit from Donnie Darko, which is a very film bro thing to fucking do.
Very niche.
He's got his camcorder on him and he decides to make a video for Charlie and has everyone kind of say a message into the camera. And of course, you know, Tao's recording all the tea for Charlie because he's a good friend. He's like, I don't want you to feel left out, dog. I got you. As Tao is recording Nick for the inaugural Charlie message, he asks Nick Nelson, because he's in like TV presenter mode. Nick Nelson, what would you like to say to your boyfriend, Charlie Spring? And Nick we see him kind of freeze. He's centered on the screen. He's staring kind of like into the camera, unfocused. And he has a daydream where he imagines that Charlie's the one actually behind the camera recording him. Nick is a little bit like love struck when he says very simply, hi, Charlie, I love you. And we come back to the party, daydream ends, seeing Tao just being goofy with the camera, right? Like not kind of feeling the gravity of how Nick is feeling. And we see Isaac walk into the party dressed as absolutely a fucking Jane Austen character. And Paola and I want to believe with our bones that it's Mr. Darcy. He looks amazing. He got a professional costume, okay?
He could be Mr. Knightley because it is a lighter,
he loves Emma
costume, and he does love. You know what?
He loves Emma. It's probably Mr. Knightley.
I think it's Mr. Knightley because it's like a light.
Yeah, Mr.
grayish.
Darcy favors dark colors. That's true.
Mr. Darcy's, we always see him in dark colors.
Yeah.
God damn it! It is Mr.
It's Mr. Knightley
from Emma.
And you know what? Isaac got his Halloween costume from the same place that they got their fucking Halloween costumes in Hocus Pocus, where they spent $600 on a fucking reproduction dress. Yes. Anyway, so we see Nick, again, we see flashes of him drinking, like different beverages. So he's clearly drinking something away. We see him drinking a lot. He's drinking light stuff, kind of like beer, right? Like we're not seeing him just like take a bottle of liquor to the face, but it is more than we, the viewer, have ever seen him drink as a character. Again, Imogen throws up after her makeout with Sahar. We see Darcy dressed as Shrek, which is fucking hilarious, and Tara dressed as Fiona.
Finally, remember when they wanted to go, when Darcy was mad that they weren't going to prom as Shrek and Fiona?
So fucking funny.
So I love that they brought that full circle in there, Shrek and Fiona for
Halloween.
The Halloween
I love
party.
it. I love it. After these brief moments, the party kind of passes by in this sped up montage. And at one point, we see Nick try to...
where Nick is even like in the middle of a sofa. And
he's sitting on the couch alone.
On. Yeah.
And he just keeps drinking and the party's just happening around him and he's not participating. We see Nick try to take a moment to himself in private where he kind of like gets away from the main part of the party. He's like upstairs in kind of a random hallway, sitting down on the floor, leaning against the wall. Tao kind of like spies him taking a moment to himself. And again, like in this huge moment of growth, I think for Tao, for both of them, maybe like we see Tao go up to Nick and go, oh, hey, like, do you mind if I join you? And Nick's like, yeah, sure. And they sit next to each other and Nick starts sobbing as Tao puts his arm around him.
This scene, just like, because Tao just kind of looks over at him and Nick is just slowly just breaking down. And then finally Tao just puts his arm around him and he just cries into Tao's chest. Like in the middle of like all the chaos we've just seen. And it's just like, that's how Nick's brain feels.
Yeah. Super chaotic and lonely.
and he kind of went to have this silent break, and then he came and got support from none other than Tao.
Yeah.
And again, it continues to solidify like these Tao and Nick moments that we get, and that trust that Tao has developed in Nick and vice versa. It culminated into this moment where Nick felt lonely and overwhelmed, and he was able to release some of that with Tao support. And I thought that was so special and an incredible shot. Like I when I saw Nick sob in that way and Tao reach out and hug, I'm like, oh my God.
Oh yeah. Literally in my notes I wrote,
again,
I too am sobbing.
I had a migraine by the time I was done watching this first half of the season.
Yeah, Paola was red like a strawberry. And I kept it cool, guys. Unaffected. I'm joking. That's a joke.
Yeah. She used work as a shield.
I absolutely did. So we see that a few weeks later, Charlie actually calls Nick on the phone from the clinic for the first time and tells him like, hey, you know, I got my diagnoses. In addition to an eating disorder, I also have OCD. Ha ha ha. If I don't joke about it, I'll cry.
Yep. Dancing through life. Yo, I'm fucking. That's my go-to anytime some fucked up shit happens. I'm like, ooh.
Excuse me, I'm extremely vain and deeply shallow, so God, life is painless for the brainless, baby.
Exactly.
I liked this interaction between them a lot because I think Nick handles it perfectly. Like Charlie's just like, yeah, if I can't make jokes about what's happening, I'll start sobbing. And Nick is kind of like, okay, this is your diagnosis, okay, like receiving the information. And then Nick is like, yeah, well, just because you have OCD doesn't mean you're going to stop getting out of a couple's costume of next year for Spider-Man. Like you got out of a couple's costume this year, not next year, buddy. And he's like, I'll be Mary Jane and you'll be Spider-Man. Which is so funny. And Charlie says, your Marvel agenda will never work on me. Girl, stop it. You're lying. The Marvel agenda has worked, Agatha, all along. What I mean is like the way that Nick handles this with like humor. Like he's not like overly serious, just like, oh shit, now I have to treat you like you're made of glass. Like he's just kind of like, all right, well, even if you have fucking OCD, you're going to take that OCD, put it into a Spider-Man costume. And that clearly puts Charlie more at ease about this conversation because maybe he was anxious about it. Maybe he was nervous about how Nick would receive it. No, he receives it just fine. I loved that. That was just, it was such a short interaction, but it was very meaningful to me.
He's visibly very worried.
Yeah.
But he definitely was able to kind of temper that to continue to bring some humor into the situation like Charlie was. Yeah. And, you know, at one point, Charlie even tries to apologize and he's like, nope, I don't care if you have OCD. You still can't say sorry.
Yep. No more S word. Rules don't change.
No, you still can't say the S word. Not allowed.
And he's like, oh, but I'm mentally ill. And Nick's like, I don't care.
Can't I play the mental illness card now?
Nope.
No.
Yeah. And so after that, we see, as part of this montage, Nick visits Charlie with his family, Charlie's family, a handful of times. He mentions that he would visit every week, but he thinks Charlie probably needs space and he didn't want to be intrusive and encroach on Charlie's like healing time and space. The self-awareness, Nick is unreal, and we've known that for 2.5 seasons, but he is not real. He's incredible. And
his arms are real.
Okay. Oh my God. And he sees Charlie for the first time during his first visit to the clinic and is finally able to give him, you know, the special box of letters and crafts that everybody in the gang made. And they're finally able to kiss for the first time in 2 months. And it's a very sweet moment.
And so something I found interesting in this moment is they're both in purple hoodies. Mm-hmm. I think Charlie pulls Nick into like this little alcove in the garden, mm-hmm. and then just fully grabs his face and they make out. And I continue to wonder, like, what is this purple telling us? Because they're both in the same shade of sweater. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, not exactly the same shade. Sure. It's funny because Nick's purple is a bit bluer.
Obviously.
But I just found that visual very interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Hot kiss. That was been a good kiss after a couple months. You go get it, Charlie.
Ridiculous. Okay. We flash back to Nick writing his journal entry in the future of this recollection. And as he's wrapping up this journal entry, we hear his doorbell go off, and he excitedly runs down the stairs to answer. Before he opens up the door, we get like a sped up montage of everything we just saw, all of the clips and snippets we just saw, in reverse. Visiting Charlie, Halloween party, friends, picnic, him sending Charlie off, in that order. The second part of the episode now switches perspectives, and now we're focusing on Charlie's point of view, kind of as if he's doing his own journaling, but his is part of his therapy regimen. We see him at the GP's office with his mom doing an eating disorder assessment for the first time and answering all the questions. And honestly, his mom being as supportive as she can be in a scene that is like 15 seconds long.
When they did that, right, when they went back and then they went right back to where Nick started, but now it's Charlie's point of view, I was like, oh, I like that.
I liked it and didn't like it at the same time.
It did feel funky.
Right.
Yeah.
I could have seen all of it happening concurrently.
Together. Right.
But I understand also like the impact of seeing them deal with it individually, almost like associating them less with each other and more as individuals.
Yes,
that's very impactful. So from Charlie's perspective now, you know, he mentions that, you know, he wasn't able to like start at the NHS eating disorder clinic for several months. So he and his parents decided to go to the private clinic, the inpatient facility. And he kind of acknowledges, like, you know, it's a big privilege to be able to do this, that my parents can even afford to send me here is like a big privilege. Yeah. So that's true. Right. Yeah, we like that self-awareness for sure. He narrates his experience at this clinic and introduces Susan, who's one of the faculty members who helps him a lot daily to kind of get through this entire process. You know, he acknowledges again, like, not everybody could afford this kind of care. But he spends his days getting treatment from Susan and ultimately another therapist named Jeff, who we discussed when we were talking about like the special guest stars of this season, played by Eddie Marsan. Charlie still does his schoolwork so that he doesn't fall behind when he eventually gets back to school. He keeps up with his studies. He meets new people like other inpatients around his age that are also at this facility, and he focuses on his treatment. He's not allowed to have a phone. I think it's something about taking pictures and like mirrors and stuff. But one thing that he does have is the stuffed lemur from the trip to the zoo. Yeah. Which is so cute.
Oh, so cute.
And he sleeps with it every night, so that's precious. And his sheets.
I wonder if he took one of Nick's hoodies with him.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
Yeah, I didn't clock it on the first watch. I would have to go back and rewatch it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he did. I wanted to call out that the sheets that he's sleeping on in this inpatient facility are yellow.
The inpatient facility is very yellow as well.
Yes, it is. Very yellow, very Charlie. He tries his best to kind of address and deal with his compulsions, right? And the music over these scenes that Charlie's narrating, like kind of, I don't want to say ironically, because it feels like usually Nick is like very upbeat and optimistic and positive. His scenes were much more melancholy, whereas Charlie's scenes are more upbeat because from his perspective, he's like working. He's not waiting for someone to come back. He's actively doing work to feel and get better.
Good point.
It's always worse to be the one left behind.
Which is what we saw Nick feel.
Absolutely. Because it's like now you're living your life with like a hole in it, whereas Charlie's living a whole different kind of life for those few months.
And they even do the visual representation of that, which is when Charlie's in the car driving away and Nick is standing on the street outside of his house, waving him off in the same spot as he's literally leaving him behind. And you know what? They do that scene to the song Black Friday. The tone went with it so well. And I revisited that song a couple of times.
At one point during this montage with Charlie's voiceover, Charlie confesses, quote, "Sometimes I feel like I didn't even want to get better. It seemed like making the effort to change was too hard," end quote. Oof. And on like a personal note, this entire podcast is a personal note, but I identify with this a lot. Like, I confess, when I say I've struggled with mental illness, I don't mean like a deep, dark, horrible, or like compulsions like Charlie or anything like that. Really just your garden variety anxiety and depression.
Not garden variety.
The type everyone's got, right? I remember the first time I asked my therapist, doesn't everyone want to kill themselves? And they were like, no.
Ooh. Ooh,
And I was like, oh, that's news to me.
That's the mother flowers.
So, like, yeah, I identify with this a lot because there's almost like a fear of the unknown, right? So there's like, you know, the devil you know and the devil you don't. I know sadness and feeling terrible all the time. But if I ever feel good again, I will be afraid of feeling sad and terrible all the time. I will be afraid of losing the good feeling.
Back.
If I live in bad feeling, I don't risk losing anything. I just live here now.
I was going to say, it's kind of like when you keep your expectations low.
You can't be disappointed.
So you're not disappointed.
I'm the queen of that.
Always expect the worst. So when the good thing happens, you're like, huh, look at that.
Oh my God. I'm pleasantly surprised. Right. When you expect things to be bad and they're bad, it met your expectation. Yeah. And you don't have to be disappointed by them. You don't have to be angry. You don't have to be angry with yourself for being hopeful. That's definitely a feeling I felt many times, like frustration with myself when I hoped for something and it didn't happen, because I'm like, I should know better. Good things don't happen. And then it's like, no, that's like not a way to live. As Charlie was in the inpatient facility, he struggled with whether he should call Nick, because the clinic has one of those like old landline phones. He's not allowed to use a cell phone. Charlie, unfortunately, felt if he called Nick, he would just make him worry. And I'm sure Nick would have contested that. By the second month that he was there, again, after doing a lot of like therapy work, he felt better about calling Nick and his other friends and checking in on them and interacting with them. During this montage, a song is playing called Serotonin, which is very appropriate and topical for these scenes. You know, before we get to this point in Charlie's recovery, Nick couldn't visit or call. Charlie had to be the one to initiate contact. However, Tori kept Charlie updated on Nick whenever the family would visit and pushed Charlie to call him. After finally talking to Nick for the first time in the conversation we saw from Nick's perspective with like Spider-Man, couple's costume, mental illness card, Charlie also calls Tao. We see a very sweet scene between Charlie and Tao, kind of similar to the scene that we saw between Nick and Tara, where it's a split screen. As Tao and Charlie are having this conversation, Tao apologizes to Charlie for being too preoccupied to see that Charlie was really struggling. And that's very self-aware of Tao. And Charlie says, you know, I don't blame you. It's okay. I was really good at hiding it. No offense, dog. I don't think you weren't that good at hiding it. I just think your friends were dealing with lots of other stuff too. Yeah. Like, that's the joke. You weren't good at hiding it, but everybody else was kind of like, I hope he's not as bad as I think he is. And then everybody just keeps ignoring it.
Tao didn't notice.
Well, he did notice, just didn't. Yeah. I think it was a situation where, like, is this bad enough for me to intervene? And then the part that Charlie was hiding was that it was.
But also he had Nick as a buffer.
Right. Nick is like the de facto. Like, you're going to deal with this. Yeah. That's your boyfriend.
So even when Tao did notice and was like, what's going on with Charlie? Like, he defaulted to Nick, which is a good thing in the state that we know that Charlie was in. Yeah. But by default, is it a good thing? Probably not. Yeah. But it definitely happened to be the best way that could have gone, for sure, like we talked about in the past episode. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
It also puts a lot of pressure on Nick, which is obviously not great.
I mean, and his friend Isaac noticed. Yeah. And he just wasn't honest. And so, like, people noticed. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like people noticed you just lied a lot. No, and I'm not, and that's not.
You had a buffer as well.
Yeah. And that's also not meant to blame. It's not meant to blame, like, you lied so nobody knew. No.
Well, and you know what I love, though? That Isaac brings that up unapologetically.
In the video.
In the video. Yeah. Where he's like, hey, look, I feel really bad because you weren't honest with me.
Yeah.
I think it's important to show, like, in the same vein as Nick, right? Like, I'm not going to walk on eggshells. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to tell you this is how it made me feel. I understand it, but this is how it made me feel.
I also think that was really important because Isaac's feelings are still valid.
Exactly.
Charlie can main character, right? Like, all he wants and as much as he needs to, but that doesn't invalidate, like, the effect his actions still have on other people. Mm-hmm. And I also like that that's kind of the show letting you know, like, hey, mental illness does not give you a blanket to treat other people in ways they don't want to be treated or be dishonest or whatever. Like, you can talk about it as an effect. Like, hey, I lashed out at you yesterday. I've been having a really tough time. I'm feeling better today or whatever. I'm sorry. But it's not like, oh, I lied to you for a year, just as an example, but I've been mentally ill, so you have to be okay with it.
I mean, and it's also important to recognize that by the time he sees this video and he's able to communicate with Tao and able to communicate with Nick and maybe confront some of those feelings that his friends had towards, while he was struggling, it's at a measured point in his treatment. That's not something that he could have received well early on.
Yeah.
And it's why he's in the facility that he's in, and they measure his exposure. Mm-hmm. He wasn't exposed to those types of conversations until the people that are working with him felt that he was ready to have those conversations.
Yeah.
That's something that not everybody has, that access. So,
or
that's
just the luxury of time.
Exactly.
Your friends being willing to wait for you, friends being willing to hear you out if you disappear for a while and then you come back. Like, not everybody has that.
So it's important to think about that as well.
Oh, for sure. Soon we circle back to Nick's first visit to Charlie at the clinic. We finally see what's on the other side of Tao's short video that he made for Charlie. And this video made me weep, dog. Like, again, I think I mentioned this earlier. I'm PMSing in a way that is, like, comical, that should be documented by history. But, like, I watched this again 2 or 3 nights ago and wept, like, tears streaming down my face. We see the entirety of the video. Like, we get an intro of Tao and Isaac kind of like, hey, Charlie, like, we want to make you this video because we miss you. We love you, whatever. We see Isaac doing kind of a talking head at the Halloween party. So he's dressed up as Mr. Knightley, we can assume. He tells Charlie, like, hey, Charlie, miss you. Oh, I wanted to let you know I finally read the Song of Achilles.
Oh, gosh.
Dog, shut up. Shut up. You haven't read it. Shut up. And even though Charlie already told him it would be sad, that he cried for 4 hours after reading it, because we love an emotionally available and aware king. Yeah, that. And what?
How did you feel after reading Song of Achilles?
What I wrote in my notes was that book squeezed tears out of my eyes like it was trying to make juice. I didn't cry for 4 hours, but it had a chokehold on me for like a few weeks. I definitely cried. Oh my God. Isaac admits, again in the same talking head, in the same part of the video, as Paola mentioned, that he's mad at Charlie because Charlie lied to him about being okay when he actually wasn't. Quote, I hope when you get back, you don't feel like you have to lie to us anymore. End quote.
That was powerful.
Absolutely. Tao managed somehow to get a video of Sahar and Imogen making out. Again, the makeout is horrible.
So it's so funny because it's Isaac that records them, because he like gives the camera.
Isaac loves the drama.
Isaac still has the camera and then flips it over.
Loves the drama.
And it's like, Tao, isn't that what you wanted? You want me to document the stuff
and
that's
Tao's like,
happening,
oh my
right?
God. And we see Sahar and Imogen break apart from this awful looking makeout, and they see that they're being recorded by Isaac, and Imogen just does like a woo girl, like ha 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 woo, and Sahar's like, wait are you fucking kidding? Is this just a joke to you? And then she storms off. Drama.
Yes. Oh, when I saw that, I was like, oh,
yikes.
They were not on the same page.
No.
Okay.
No, they were not. We see a clip of Darcy with their new haircut because they are coming out as using they them pronouns on this video to Charlie because, quote, I just feel like he gets it, end quote.
Oh, good for them.
I love that. I love that so much.
I love that. Yes. To finally see them like fully embrace, right, like this, it felt so good. Mm-hmm. To see them so comfortable and kind of, they start off by saying, oh, this is just an experiment.
Yeah. I don't know. I might change my mind.
We've been seeing it.
The transition.
Yeah.
And the fact that all the friends and Tara were so supportive. So supportive. Just like, yeah, dude, be whatever you want.
Yeah.
Dude is always gender neutral, by the way. So we see a clip of Elle in an art room in front of an easel of a beautiful painting of Charlie. And she turns to the camera and tells Charlie that she posted a painting on Instagram that went baby viral and gained 10,000 followers. Girl, that's fucking huge. Can you teach us how to do that? And we get another clip where the gang is kind of at one of the picnics that they frequently have. And we see Darcy listing off all of Tara's academic accomplishments as Tara grows increasingly uncomfortable and takes the camera from Tao to focus on Nick. So we've gotten multiple instances of Tara just fucking hating acknowledging how well she's doing at school and what that means for her future. Tao somehow managed to get video of Mr. Ajayi and Mr. Farouk having lunch together privately in the art room where they're clearly dating and feeling very awkward about it. They both say hi to Charlie for the purposes of the video, which is really funny.
Thank you, Tao. Bye, Tao. Thank you, Tao. Bye, Tao.
Truly. Bye. Can you leave? Bye. And again, Elle's painting of Charlie is really beautiful, and it features some of those classic Heartstopper floating leaves around his head.
How does she know?
Man, I love it. We see Isaac and Tao sitting down in front of the camera to conclude the video with more words of support for Charlie, letting him know that they want him to feel loved. Tao ends the video with the clip that we saw him take at the Halloween party of Nick telling Charlie that he loves him, so that we can all cry again.
Because his delivery, his face, the shift in his expression, like so subtle.
Oh yeah, no, it's all tearjerker, all tearjerkers. After Charlie watches this, obviously he felt really touched by everyone's well wishes and expressions of love for him. He felt very special. I agree, Paola, with what you said earlier. Like, if this was something that he had received like a month prior, it would have gone down totally differently.
I think it might have made him angry. Yeah.
Like, made him angry, made him embarrassed.
Made him sad.
For sure.
Yeah.
Guilty.
That's his go-to.
What's that
before
like?
Anger. Yeah.
Whereas now he might still be feeling those emotions in a much smaller way, and he can kind of focus on feeling that gratitude.
He can process them and focus on feeling the gratitude, which is a great word.
Yeah. After 2 months of being at the inpatient facility, Charlie returns home around the time of the holidays, hoping to continue his treatment as an outpatient and continue going to therapy. So Charlie's family picks him up on his last day as he's moving out. And again, we know that time has passed because now there are holiday decorations all around the ward where Charlie was staying. And we see his father turn around from the driver's seat and ask, "Ready?" And Charlie replies, "Yeah." And Tori takes his hand in the backseat of the car and they drive away.
Still crying, by the way.
No, the tears they're just streaming. Much like Netflix as a service, my tears are streaming. So we see Charlie interacting with his mom almost in a positive way back at home about that evening's dinner, because I guess as part of his treatment, he's been given a meal plan where he knows what his meals will be in advance. He asks her if he's able to take some time before dinner to go visit Nick. He promises he'll be back in time. And she very kindly agrees, which is like wild to see from his mom. The episode ends with him visiting Nick, coming back full circle to that moment where Nick was finishing up his journal entry, and then he runs down the stairs to answer the door. It's because Charlie's there. They warmly embrace each other as animated leaves float around them on the screen. We get a final title card with resources listed for people who have struggled with eating disorders or mental health issues, and the resource is wannatalkaboutit.org, and we will link to that in the show notes.
That final shot of him and Nick embracing under the door frame with all the Christmas decorations and then the leaves, like, gave me chills. Like, home, and then, oh God. And then, like, just, like, the thought of, like, home for the holidays. Like,
I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. No.
Oof. Don't make me do it again. I don't want to cry again. I'm going to have a migraine.
Yeah, you need to get used to crying.
Oh, so fucking good.
It's so good. It was so good. I mean, when I initially watched it, I was like, I'm staying cool. I'm not crying. And then I watched it again and I was like, just kidding. I am. I'm gonna cry a lot. I mean, again, it's like these episodes have been so jam-packed and like so heavy. The whole show is just teaching you. It's just teaching you how to do stuff. It's teaching you how to be a person. Like, if you're, a straight person, a cisgendered person, older, younger, whatever, if you can get past the fact that you're not the same age as these characters, you may not have the same sexual preferences as these characters or whatever.
Or lived experience.
Yes. If you can just observe their experiences and appreciate them at face value, you're going to learn a lot of stuff about how to be a person dealing with many different things. This is a show I wish I could have watched when I was fucking 15 and I was well on my way to losing my fucking mind. I wish I could have had something like this to teach me how to be a fucking person. My fucking parents weren't doing it. So I wish
our society as a whole. Society. Oh my
Yolanda
God.
Vega.
Yolanda Vega.
I'm weak.
That's the stand. Just leave it. Society as a whole. As much as we criticize like fucking Gen Zers all the time.
Oh, what do we criticize them for?
I just feel like as a society,
it's just because they're young. That's what society does.
Yeah. And you know what? Let me not say Gen Z. I think it started with millennials. Mm-hmm. I'm so proud of our generation for bringing a focus to mental health. And then Gen Z for like reaffirming that shit. You know, I feel like millennials have very, in general as a generation, like we have like a bit of people pleasing tendencies and like, so it's like Gen Z every once in a while just reminds you like, no, cut that shit out. Like, you better fucking stand the line. I love it. What our generation has done for bringing light to mental health and what the upcoming generation is doing to uphold that. Mm-hmm. And this show is like a testament to that because it's written by a millennial for Gen Z. Again, like, hey, this is the thing I didn't have. This is the thing I didn't grow up with. I'm modeling this for you. And so for Gen Z to reinforce that every step of the way. So fucking love it. I love it.
I often say that I'm grateful I grew up when I did, obviously because we get to like live in the present as adults with modern conveniences and stuff, but also because as much as I was on social media as a teenager, it was vintage social media. It was like old Facebook, or even before that, like MySpace. Like it wasn't the type of social media with the same level of consumption as we have today. And I look back on just like the fragility of being an adolescent, but also being on Instagram. Oh no. Oh no.
Well, you know what was, I think the key difference between like our development of social media, like is, for example, like MySpace, Tumblr, all of that was like, I need to express myself so much. Everything was like about expression and identifying who you are. And like,
I think there was a lot of authenticity to it.
Right. And like, you have like the emo Tumblr profiles and you like can go on somebody's MySpace and this is their favorite song and this is their top 8. Like it was so personal. Mm-hmm. It has evolved into like showing off.
It's the highlight reel.
It's not authentic. It's like the least authentic. It's like, oh, what's popular? What are people doing? What are people talking about? How to go viral? How to entertain? It wasn't about that.
Yeah. It's commodified.
It's commodified.
Yeah. We consume it like it's a product. We consume each other like we're products. And like nobody wants to consume weird sad person who takes bad pictures. Like no. So right? So like I totally understand what you mean. That this thirst for self-expression, this thirst for like shouting into the void and having it shout back. Yeah. That was being on the internet in like the 90s and 2000s. Mm-hmm. And I think in the 2010s, obviously significantly more in the 2020s, like that's a phrase I just said. It's so much more intended to sell you as a product. Because, mm-hmm. you know, if you're cool enough and hot enough on social media, a brand might reach out to you and they might send you free shit. And it's like, yeah, is the average Joe going to have that experience? No.
I don't know. And then you just have a bunch of teenage girls trying to live up to that.
Yeah. So wrapping up this episode, now that we're done with episode 4, we are through with the first half of Heartstopper season 3.
We have cried our eyes out.
We have cried. We've laughed. We've cried. We've mostly cried. We haven't really laughed that much. It's been really sad. But it's also made us confront and reconsider and think about a lot of things, which is always constructive. So the show's done it again. It's made us think. It's made us feel. It's taught us some stuff about how to handle those things. And the timing is ironic because we're discussing this now as we are in the very middle of the holiday season. And on the show, they're in the midst of the holiday season. Everybody's got their decorations up. Charlie's back home for the holidays. As we shout this out into our particular void to all of you, one thing that we'd love for you to take away from this is like, it's really important, especially this time of year, which can be fraught with like so many different emotions and memories of so many different experiences, it's really important to like check in with yourself, take care of yourself, maintain boundaries, enforce them if you have had to make them. Have your support group, your network. If you don't have a support group or network, you've got a friendly neighborhood podcast that will absolutely respond to your DMs
every time. It might not be the same day.
It might not be the same day. Frequently isn't, but we'll respond. And you know, if you've got a community, whether that community is online, whether that community is in person, international, local, lean on your community, your support system, and frequently check in with yourself. The holidays can be really hard. Of course, I'm saying the holidays, I'm just like the Judeo-Christian Muslim holidays, but like this time of year, generally, I think there's so much culture built around it. There's so much high expectation given to it. That is not super constructive. And I think it's one of those things where like you can be left feeling really down or disappointed if you don't have New Year's Eve plans, if you don't have a significant other, if you don't have the type of family that gets together and celebrates these kinds of things, or maybe you don't believe in it so you don't celebrate it. Like culture and society around us, especially in the US, will have you feeling like you're a fucking leper for those things. And we're here to remind you that you're not.
Yeah.
If December 25th is just a Wednesday to you this year, it's just a fucking Wednesday.
Take care of yourselves, guys. We hope that regardless what this season means to you, what this month means to you, that you're having a good one. And if you're not, if there's anything we learned from this episode, is that feelings are temporary.
Feelings are temporary. Time is fleeting. December won't be forever. Neither will 2024. Honestly, it's ending. December's ending. 2024 is ending. We're about to start a new year. That's in its own way a different brand of bullshit. But yeah, if you're feeling something that you don't want to be feeling, it won't last forever. There will be other days. There will be better days. There will be a lot of discomfort between now and those better days, but that discomfort is worth it.
So, love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, please leave a review anywhere you get your podcasts. Come and find us on Instagram at Sis Flicks Podcast, or shoot us an email at sisflickspodcast@gmail.com. Also, you can find us on Patreon. Ooh. If you want to support this little taller podcast. Get a little bit of some bonus content. Sometimes when we get and
a little bit of bonus content when Donald Trump hasn't just been re-elected president.
Goodness. And some little baby merch every once in a while. Let us know what you think. And if you have any suggestions or movie requests, hit us up.
We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays. Happy holidays.